This is the Spur Leadership Podcast. I'm Mac Richard, and in this installment, Mike Ward and I sit down with Theo Rossi, actor, producer, and entrepreneur, as well as husband and father. From his early years working the streets of Staten Island to his role as Juice in the Sons of Anarchy, to becoming a producer in his own right, Theo tells how he went from just trying to make as much money as possible to trying to make as big a difference as he can. Theo, I appreciate you making the time, man.
Thank you.
But I know, if you go back to Sons of Anarchy and all the other things that you've done that people know, I'm really interested in kind of how you got there. I would love, just tell us a little bit about kind of your growing up and how you arrived.
At that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the moment that changed everything. The journey there was, it almost seems like it's a different person, like looking back now, because it's truly this business that I'm in, that one of the businesses I'm in, but acting in general, acting, producing, Hollywood was the absolute polar opposite of where I would ever think I would have wound up in my life, meaning that it wasn't even like I didn't know anybody who was an actor. I've never even seen anybody in a play. I never was one of those kids who went to plays or, I'd gone to Broadway a few times when I was young, but it was just so out of the realm. It felt like almost like they were fantasies. The people who did that were like, you would almost have a better chance thinking like you can be a Major League Baseball player or a basketball player or something that was more relatable because, you played sports every day. But I didn't know anyone that acted. So the way I grew up, very like Staten Island where I grew up, Brooklyn to Staten Island is where my family went, especially in the 80s, was very like lower to middle. You'd sit in the middle and you could see the top, and then, if it's a bad year, you can see the bottom, and, you're kind of always just floating around. It definitely didn't have the disparity that it has now. People in the middle really felt they can reach that upper. Yeah. And, it was always just a step climb, lower to middle to upper, right? And now it just feels so far away. And because of that, it was a very community-driven place, but it was also, Staten Island became popular because all the organized crime from Brooklyn moved out there in the 80s and the 70s. So it was a very crime-infested now more than ever. I mean, the heroin epidemic and a lot of things that have gone on in Staten Island that are quite sad. But it's back then was just very criminal-minded. So when you grew up, you would watch gangsters in their Cadillacs and in their gold chains and their tracksuits, and that was way more obtainable than, forget acting, that wasn't even in the realm, but being an athlete. Right. Because that was kind of the way it was, I think, for anybody who knows growing up in New York City. It was either the streets or sports. Unless you had a relative or a family member or some type of mentor that would be like, you can be a lawyer or you can be this. It just didn't exist like that. So the journey starts with what I've realized now, and in all my self-reflection and in all my self-inventory from going back then, is everybody from that time, their life was existing. I need enough money to exist. Yeah. It was never, I have enough money to do something, maybe we should squirrel it away and do this. It was, I just need to exist. And what they pushed on to their children was, you get a good job. Right. Make money. Right. You'll be fine. They never told you the next step.
Yeah. What you're talking about is vision.
Correct.
It's having a vision.
Didn't have it.
Beyond just existing, beyond just surviving.
And I don't blame them. My father left when I was very young, and my mom was in this stage of, we need to exist. We gotta survive. Yeah. I'm finished now with this situation in college where I have no discernible skills, and I have to go back to where I grew up. I don't know what I'm doing. And my friends now are going in all these different directions, right? One's in NYU grad school, and I'm just talking about the people closest to me. A few are working on Wall Street, Anderson Consulting. One's at bartending in Manhattan. And here I am going, okay, well, what do I do?
You've moved back home.
I moved back home because I don't know what to do. While people were looking for jobs and setting up the next half of their life, I had no one telling me that. I had no one asking me what I was going to do. And I don't blame that. It was just never a part. There was never a guiding force in my life at all you know, my uncle was a very spiritual force in my life, but he was broke his entire life. He used to say money terrorized him his whole life. He never had any. Yeah. So we would never talk about future and money. Yeah. His was like how to treat people, how to be a good person, how to love, how to be loved, how to have an amazing marriage. And he went through some crazy stuff. But I never had anybody say, like, what are you going to do? So now here I am, I come back and I'm like, well, what am I going to do? And all I would see was everybody was working on Wall Street. It's pretty much what everybody did within the 5 boroughs. Like, if you didn't know what you were going to do, you go work on Wall Street, you go figure out money. And there were always scams. There were chop shops and people doing all this kind of, you know, crazy activity and all this stuff you would hear about. And I'm sitting here going, okay, I don't know what to do. So my step aunt was working in a company. Still to this day, I'm not exactly sure what I was doing there. I worked there for 3 months. I know it was on Wall Street. It was right next to the Trade Center. And we worked right next door, like Water Street over there. And it had something to do with fax paper. This sounds crazy, but back then everybody was faxing. Yeah. All the big companies. So I would go out with all these salesmen who would provide fax paper and fax services to these companies. And I just had this job because I had no idea what I was going to do. And I'm there, I don't even know how long, but I'm on, I know the day I left. I'm on the train, on the subway, and I'm sitting with a guy who is, I mean, then it seems so much older, but he was, you know, mid 50s, you know, on his way. And we're sitting on the subway and it's super crowded and it's super hot and I'm super miserable. I got this cheap suit on and you could see the skin between my socks and the suit. Like it was just, everything was just wrong about this. Yeah. I was not a suit guy. I didn't know what was happening. I was a hip hop kid who's wearing this suit. And he looks at me and he goes, man, you are so lucky. He goes, that you started this young in this company. He goes, and I'll never forget it. He goes, in 30 years, you could be like vice president of this company. And as the subway was moving fast, my entire life flashed in front of me. I was like, 30 years? What?
You just
I'm
sitting
not
there
gonna be
holding
on this thing for 30 years? And he had lived in Connecticut and he had a family and he would commute in every day. And I was like, if I do this for 30 years, I can't, it's not gonna happen. Yeah. Came back that day, went into the, whoever, you know, whatever the guy was who, you know, was running the floor that we were on. And I said, so listen, I can't do this anymore. To be honest, I don't really know what I'm doing. I said, to be, you know, I just opened phone books.
Fax paper.
Yeah, you just tell me to call people and ask them if they do fax services. I'm literally cold calling people all day. I'm not going to do this. He's like, but your aunt, you know, this and that. And I said, I'll give you my 2 weeks. He's like, you don't need to give me 2 weeks. I was like, he's like, you could just, I was like, yeah, I got to get out of here. Yeah. And I ran away. And then it was, okay, well, what's going to happen? Well, life has pivots, right? I literally had no clue what I was going to do with my life.
Right.
I'm still in my mind this young kid, but I still have a very kind of thuggish mentality of like, well, I'm always going to be one of those people that scrapes by, whatever it is.
So you still haven't thought of vision?
No,
or
there is
future?
no vision. There is no, there's just, do I have enough money to go buy pizza? Do I have enough money to like buy that Tommy Hilfiger shirt I want? Like I'm not.
You're still in that survival mode that you grew up in.
Yeah, and just not thinking. And again, I didn't learn anything in school except how to survive and have money. Yeah. But there was no plan. And I still talk about this to this day because then, you know, to really fast forward, you know, I get into this, I'm in this class and I'm helping my friend and I never did anything in class. I never did a play, I never did anything. But I met somebody who was cast in this film that he was directing called Born at the Wrong Time. And it was about a young drug dealer and his older brother who just gets out of jail, very similar to American History X, but in the drug dealing world. And I told him my story and he gave me the lead role in this movie and I had no idea how to act. I had no idea what I was doing. I think I was like plucking my eyebrows. I don't know what was happening at that time, but like I'm in this movie and I realized I think I can do this. So when I decided to do it, I studied the entire history of Hollywood, from like Mack Sennett and Charlie Chaplin, you know, up into Daryl Zanuck and Jack Warner and how the studios got started to Bette Davis. And then I just started watching movies, every movie that's ever been made. Literally, I watched everything. And I said, if I'm going to do this, and it was the first time in my life not playing sports, not playing soccer, which then went to football, and I played football. It was the first time in my life that I dove in on something and I wanted to master something.
Yeah.
I went, and I had never heard of 10,000 hours, I'd never heard of that, but I went in so deep that I was just buying biography after biography. I just wanted to know everything. If anybody was in the business, I was grilling them and asking them questions and this and that, and then really quickly, right after that film, my friends and I, all the friends that I grew up with, most of the guys I just told you about, who all were pretty set up for their lives, we all made a decision to move to Los Angeles, and everybody dropped what they were doing.
Really?
Yeah.
Like how many of y'all were there?
5.
Wow.
And so some of these people are established careers, right?
Yeah.
You're starting this.
Coming out of Arizona
soon-to-be-
State, coming out of Delaware, coming out with like degrees. Like this was going to be the business. Besides me and my friend who's the bartender at the time, who happens to be my partner and everything now, we're the degenerates. Like, we had no idea what they were doing. These guys had careers.
Right.
They were on their way and they all dropped everything.
So one thing that just stands out about you jumping into this head first, is it potentially the fact that there was such an unknown? Like you said, how you grew up, the people you grew up with, you didn't see anyone going through this journey, which most people, I know of some people that have thought they would try to become an actor, an actress, make it. And it's not an easy thing to make. So if you had seen that journey of, wow, this is potentially very much, the odds are against me.
I would have never did it.
Never done it. Interesting.
I've always said my greatest strength in any business and my greatest strength in life is my ignorance. Yeah. As weird as that sounds, like the less I know, the better. And that's why I always say in anything I deal with now in my own current life is I'm like, don't ever tell me this is the way it's done. Because when someone goes, no, Theo, you don't understand, this is the way it's done, I go, that's not true. Nothing is the way it's done. Right. There's always another way. So if I would have known all that stuff, I might have hesitated.
Okay, let me ask you a question, Theo, because you grew up with this mentality that was just kind of hammered into you.
Yeah.
Make money.
And fight.
And fight.
Yeah.
Okay. When did you stop thinking about the money? And here's why I ask that, because I think there are a lot of people who will see this conversation and we all have to think about money. We all have to eat, we have to live,
Shelter,
et cetera,
yeah.
et cetera. But it's not enough to just say, I'm going to follow my dream. You have to learn how to merge your passion, your dream, and the realities of living. So when did you quit thinking about making money and I'm just going to go be an actor?
I think that when it became about the journey.
Okay.
So to try to put this into words, it was like I was learning. I learned nothing in school, not just college. I learned nothing in school, period. High school, grammar school, I learned nothing. I never applied myself or paid attention to anything. And because of that, I finally found something that I went, this is attainable. I can do this. And once I saw that I can do it, I never thought about the money. I just thought about getting better.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, well, I don't know how to audition or even hold the papers, so how do I do that? And then I'd conquer that and go, oh, that makes sense. I have a photographic memory. I'm not going to hold papers. And okay, well, I don't need papers, so then how do I make sure I stand and what do I wear? And oh, okay, well, that audition went wrong. What did I do wrong? And then I would like literally break down and self-assess and self-assess. So that was keeping my mind so busy that, and I'm not going to lie, in the first couple of years, I started waiting tables and bar backing and doing whatever I needed to do to make money. There was still, I was always, and I think I'll die criminal-minded, where there was ways that I had to access money. So I was like, okay, well, if I do this, I can kind of get by and I can still focus on my acting. And if I do that, and if this goes on in this restaurant, and wait a second, they're using these kind of tickets and I can knock this down and I can make more money doing it. The one thing that I think everybody has a healthy level of fear. I think we have to have fear.
Yeah.
But I think that you need to make friends with fear. And you have to know that you have fear, and instead of being scared of the fear, you have to be comfortable with the fear that's coming with it. So I was always comfortable with the fear of like, this might not work. So it's just, to me, it's about time and time and time. It doesn't mean that people don't hit it out of the park on their first shot. Some people are naturals in everything. But where I get comfortable, I'm still learning every single day. I'm very fortunate of the people I've been able to work with over the last 19 years, or really I think Suns 2009. I always say Suns was like going to college, and that was my college. Suns was like going. I wouldn't even say college. It was like my whole education of everything, life, everything, and it was also life changed, meaning that I wasn't worried about money as much. I had a recognition in the business. So that show came on, and it's about 10 years ago is when it started.
Yeah. How many years did it go for?
7 years, but by the time it's all said and done, it's almost like 8 years. So, then it's 11 years ago. It's 2008, 12 years ago is when we got started, but we didn't come on the air till 2009. So.
But that by itself is such a unique run to have a show that goes 7 full years, and carries a full arc.
Crazy.
Is unheard of.
Yeah, and
basically.
I could be wrong, and I might be, and I'm sure somebody will fact check it, but I think it's also one of the only shows, if not the only show in history, where the ratings went up every single year.
Really?
Yeah, so we how I think Walking Dead's on like season 900 or whatever they are. and
Law and Order.
Yeah, these shows that just run forever. I think we could have kept doing that.
Yeah.
It just wasn't in the plan. The plan was always 7 years.
Right.
So, he had, when a writer writes towards that plan, what's going on in season 2, 3, and 4 is, if we get to 7, is going to affect that. So you can't just, the ones that change, usually the show kind of goes downhill. So he had a plan, and he was sticking to the plan. No, that's a rarity. Listen, that's a whole different conversation of TV. That was weekly TV. Yep. That was coming on every week, which they're starting to bring back a little now. You would go do interviews in magazines between the episodes. You would live with people in their home for 6 months.
Right.
Where was that shot, by the way?
In LA, in North Hollywood, and then kind of all over up northern LA. So I lived there. Yeah, I was living in LA 15 years.
Okay, so Sons of Anarchy happens, and here's what I think is so fascinating, because I know that you've now multiplied those experiences through Sons and other things that you've done to starting your own production company, which that to me is a fascinating transition, because it's one thing, number one, to get hired as an actor, I know. Number two, to have a run like y'all had on Sons. But then to parlay that into, I'm gonna take on the responsibility of producing my own content. That's where I think all of these experiences that you've had going back, you kind of start to leverage now. And now all of a sudden, you're thinking about the big picture. Whereas before it was like, I can do this, I want to develop a craft. Now you're thinking, I've got to have production designers, I've got to have writers, I've got to have partners, I've got to have other actors. Talk about what that's been like, and just the experiences that you've drawn from to help make that a reality.
I think one thing leads to another. Meaning, like, I try in life not to take, I try not to jump from step 1 to step 10. I enjoy the steps. Yeah. So while I was doing Sons, what I had found out is it was such a chaotic time. It was such a chaotic experience, is the best I can say. And I don't necessarily mean chaotic in a negative way. It was so big, the show. It had taken on a life of its own. Fame is a tricky thing. It affects people very different. I don't know who it was who said that if you're a jerk and you get famous, you become a giant jerk. Yeah. If you're a sweetheart and you get famous, you become the nicest person in the world. It accentuates what you have.
It becomes like a guitar amplifier.
Exactly.
I mean, it amplifies what's already there,
and it really
good, bad, or ugly.
Amplifies it out. It's almost what social media is doing to the everyday people right now is, if you're kind of a slippery, kind of negative, bad person, it's gonna come out in your social media at one point or another. Yes. So, you better be ready to go if you're gonna put that out there, because that's on your lawn. And what I found was when I was doing that show, I tried to anchor a lot of things that were going on. So I'd work directly with the producers, I'd work directly with the creator, I'd work directly with the directors and be like, I got it, I'll take care of it. I'll go talk to them. I got it, I'll do this. I'll go. And then I'd be able to come in and simmer situations. Okay. I'd be able to say, what are you doing? Yeah. Come on. Like,
so you were going in as more of a leader, not necessarily saying, hey, I want to go learn these different crafts.
I would never call myself the leader because it wasn't my show. What I did was I came in more of an irrational sense.
Yeah.
Where I'd go, listen, you are wild right now, or this is happening. Or, hey, listen, I just heard you argue for 2 hours. You held up production, which cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And what you held up production about was how you were going to walk through that door. So I'm going to ask you a question, I would say. How many doors have you walked through in your life? And they'd be like, what do you mean? I go, how many doors do you think you've walked through in your life? Millions? Have you ever thought about it? Don't you just walk in? Why are you thinking about that? Just walk in the door. Oh, you're right.
So you're starting to see this talent that you have of leading others.
And also of duping them in a way, of like getting them out of their head and like putting them on the other way. So while I was sitting there, one of the guys who was just really the bait and switch of like, this is ridiculous, do this. So what happened was I at the time, one of the director producers was like, you should really direct or produce. You're really good with people. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. As I knew Sons was coming to an end, I started seeing less and less of the films that I enjoyed growing up. I love drama. I love coming of age stories, and I love romantic comedies. These are things that were completely disappearing at the time. And I was like, man, I want to do stuff like that. And this is pre-Netflix getting into their own content. This is pre-Amazon, all them doing it. It was just small independent studios, but independent films were starting to become less and less. And it was really the beginning of that giant tentpole films, the Iron Mans of the world. So I said, I'm gonna try to make a film. And I made my first film, and I realized that I had a talent for raising money. I had a talent for speaking to people and getting them to see the vision very clearly. I was sitting on a set doing a film, and I have been a runner, an athlete, my whole life. I drink a gallon of water a day, and the water company came up. And the only reason I make that quick jump is it was really one step to the other because it was just business.
Yeah. Right.
And then it was like, so one went to one. And you can say that about anything in life. While I was completely nuts when I was younger and being wild and being in all these relationships and, wondering why they all soured and why didn't they go right. And it's because I was this crazy drinking, partying, da-da-da. And then all of a sudden I always call it stepping out of the matrix, where I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not doing this. And I settle my own life. Well, then I meet my wife. Then we have kids. Yeah. So one step leads to the other step to the other step. It's the first step I made.
Theo, you said something a second ago. You talked about when you talk about budget constraints, which you don't really have to worry about as the actor. Never. You show up, do your deal. You're the hired gun, you said. But when you're in charge, when you're responsible, talk about how those budget constraints actually help the creative process, because you have to work within limits which help you to make choices.
Mm-hmm. I say this in all the businesses we're in now, and in more for the film business than anything, is it's the most creative you have to be.
Right.
We don't have it. Let's lose the talk of if we did have it. We don't have it. Right. So what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Because we're not going to stop. So what are we going to do? We don't have it. So let's figure it out. And then it's like, now you start to get creative. And what you come to find out is also what I love, and I've seen this so much, and people don't realize this when they're in it. Everybody who's in creative process or in a product or in any business goes, if I just had more money. But if you're not ready, you're going to make a bigger mistake. Yeah. So that small mistake happens at $1. But what if you had $50 million? That's a really big mistake. Yep.
Yeah, we've talked more money, more problems. Is a saying, that we've used in Tupac or.
Yeah, it's Tupac. It's Biggie actually, but
Biggie,
that's
thank you. You would know it.
Enough.
You would know it.
It's close enough.
But exactly that is business or movies or whatever it is in creation. You have to grind. You have to roll up your sleeves. You have to be creative, as we're talking about here, to figure it out.
Because
it's very different path once you start to
and what
make
you want to do
now.
is you want to figure out all those things at that low level, so when that high level comes, you're like, we've been here before.
And you know what I think too, Theo? I think somebody who's watching this right now, look at those opportunities, look at those moments when you are really constrained financially, and go, and look at it as an opportunity and the blessing that you talk about it being, because now you get a chance to figure something out when the stakes are relatively low so that you can build on it as they get bigger. And as they get bigger, you have there's more opportunities, more money, more problems, but it's also with those opportunities, more responsibility.
100%. And listen, you can become a slave to that own your own money. You can become trapped by this thing that you create. You know, ultimately when it gets to a really high sense, you know, I tell people all the time, you know, people go, well, what's the difference, you know, if you have money in this and that? I go, well, your nut's just going to be bigger every month. It's the same thing. It's the same ratio. You know, when I think about what I used to live on when I first moved out to LA, we came out with like $600 and something, and what I would live on monthly was literally peanut. I could spend that in 2 hours now. It's not, it's only because that's just life with kids and wife and this and that and houses but what I've come to find out is that being constrained in all ways, in yourself personally too, I believe this, it's very hard, and what we're dealing with in society today, especially in a reflection society, meaning that a lot of people are scrolling social media all day and they're seeing highlights of people's lives.
Yep.
So they're seeing the Ferraris, the Jags, the money, the Rolexes, the bracelets, the this, the that, and they're going, I don't have that. No, you don't. But if you work, you might get a Casio.
Yeah.
And then you might get a tag, and then you might move up if you keep trading.
You're talking in steps again, right? Where most people see these things and go, I may be at step 1, I want to be at step 10. And don't think about 2 through 9.
Yeah, and the thing is listen, this society is consistently telling people that if you're at step 1 and not step 9, 8, 9, or 10, you're worthless. Yep. So what I tell people now is like, okay, well, look at your life, do your self-inventory, find what can't you live without? One of my acting idols, and I don't use the word idol a lot, but one of my acting gurus, and who I've had the pleasure of sharing the screen with, you know, for years on Luke Cage, was Alfre Woodard, right? Mm-hmm. And Alfre Woodard will tell me, and I remember what she said, and it's so true. A lot of people would ask her, she's been in the game 40 years, they would say to her, you know, multiple Oscar nominations, Emmy nominations, all this stuff. They would say to her, I want to be an actor. I want to be in the business. And she would go, unless you can't live without doing it, unless like literally you can't sleep at night, you can't breathe. Like if it's calling you to a point where this is the only thing you want to do in life, then go do it. But if you even have this much doubt, don't do it. Interesting. Just don't do it.
You know what's crazy? I had a mentor of mine tell me the same thing about ministry. When I was in high school and I thought maybe I was called into ministry, he said, Mac, if you can do anything else and enjoy it, do not do this. Right. But if you are called to this, you'll never be happy doing anything else. And so it's the same kind of thing. But I think people discover their callings. Vocation is a calling. You discover your calling in different ways and at different times. And there's no cookie cutter formula to figuring that out. I want to talk a little bit about Ounce because Theo, I think it's so you've got a strong entrepreneurial bent just kind of running through you. Yeah. But so you're on a set drinking water. You drink a lot of water for health's sake.
And I travel
a lot. And you travel a lot. So then you go, let's start a water company.
Well, I always look for everything I do in life, and acting was probably the beginning of that. Maybe even before that with making money or whatever, is I always find what's the need for me. And I know that I'm not special. And what I mean by that is, I don't mean to diminish my own role as a human, is that I'm not special, that if I have a thought, usually someone else has it. Yeah. So what I mean by that is I drink a lot of water. I drink 1 gallon of water a day. Every single morning at this time when I was doing this movie, I had a glass gallon in my house. I would put it under the faucet, I would fill it up, and at the end of the day, I knew I had to drink 128 ounces of water. So I would feel good because whether I ran 5 or 6 miles or 10 miles, whether I went to the gym, whatever I did at that moment, I knew that I was getting my water throughout the day. So even if so then I'd be like traveling, I don't want to walk around with a glass gallon, so I would buy like, you know, these 32 ounce things and I'd pour the water in, and if I was on a set, I'd have to bring the gallon and put it in my room, and I was always tracking it.
And you're sitting there going 32 plus 32.
And it was almost like methodical, but it was always like, this is such a problem, like 16.9 and 33.8, like there's gotta be an easier way. So again, I said, man, you know what somebody should do? They should do it like metrics. They should just do like 10 ounce, 20 ounce, 30 ounce, 40 ounce, 50 ounce, find out how much water you need, your athletic level, your age, your exertion level, and let this program spit out how much water you need. And then you can say, I think 80 ounces is good for me. So one of my buddies was working at Jay-Z's company, Rock Nation, at the time. He was part of his liquor arm for Ace of Spades and Douce, and I called him up, and he was the only person I knew in the business, the only person I'd ever met in the beverage business. And I said, this is my idea. I went to art school. I had a friend who I just met who was also, who you know, Caesar, who's an amazing designer, and I started saying, this is what I want, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm thinking, and it's gonna be even numbers, and it's gonna be this, and it's gonna be 20s and 40s and 10s, and it's gonna be about it. I said, hey, listen, before I jump in this huge waterfall that I'm about to get into, I said, it's just gonna terrorize my life. Tell me if it's a good idea. And I said, and if you tell me it's a good idea, I'm gonna move forward. And I went and I met him in New York, and he's like, you have to do this, bro, nobody's doing it. Yeah. He goes, this is a disruptor. You're playing towards like how we all grew up, and you're also playing towards this getting the metrics. Yeah. And I said I wanted to keep it simple, and I wanted it to be like the no frills stuff when we grew up. And then when I decided to do it, that was an entirely another ballgame. I'd say up until really this moment, building the plane while I'm flying it, don't really know much. Like, just figuring it out.
Yeah. Well, like, knowing a little bit about the journey, before we're sitting down here, you use the word simple, and that's the thing that stands out to me. It is simple. Yeah. Oh, why didn't anyone else just do even numbers?
It's all I hear.
20 ounce, 30 ounce, 40 ounce. So you've been doing it now for a few years.
A few years. And it's about to take a major turn.
About to take a major turn?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Talk us a little bit about getting people to come alongside, because this is obviously something you don't do by yourself.
No.
Number one, how do you identify the people you want to help? And number two, how do you get them to say, we want to be a part of this?
Made a lot of mistakes.
Like
a lot of mistakes. In business, what I've come to learn, and I think everybody should be aware of this, and I don't think that it's saying it in a bad way, is that a lot of people, I always call it wolves in prayer hands, where they're like, no, I'm not a wolf, I'm not a wolf. I'm not a wolf, I swear to you I'm not. And you're like, oh man, you look so sweet. That's a sweet looking wolf. And then you're like, oh man, you're a wolf. I should have seen through the prayer. But so I got a lot of those, especially I think when you're in a public situation, a lot of people who come in immediately want to help, they want to help, they want to help. They see an opportunity.
Sure.
And I don't blame them, because you have to understand that no two people are alike in this world, and that sometimes just being near something that looks successful, there's a perception of success.
Sure.
Some of the most successful people I know are also super disciplined who stays around them.
Yeah.
I'm never going to change who I am, which is I will trust every single human that comes in my life until they bash me over the head. Mm-hmm. And if I change that, no matter how much I've wanted to, I'm going to become what I hate, which is that I'm going to become these people who are so standoffish that like they're always on guard. I've been fortunate enough where my best friend since we met in 8th grade, so
14, 15.
No, I think it's like I turned 13, so it was probably like 12. We met at orientation, but we played in basketball leagues and CYO and all that together, but we didn't really hang all the time. He's been my business partner in everything. So what's so amazing is I have someone in my life that has known every single thing about me.
Yep.
There's nothing he doesn't know, and there's nothing I don't know about him. I'm a true believer, and I always say, like, I'm as honest as I can be to a fault, because I have no other reason. There's nothing behind what I say, because I'm very aware of my mortality. Like, I'm gonna die. What's the point of lying? Like, the thing is, my whole thing is like, I just want people to drink more water. I've never heard somebody say to me, oh man, I drank too much water today. I am so hydrated. I don't know what to do. What I do hear all the time is, I don't drink enough water. Yeah. I don't. What I'm trying to do with the whole thing with this company, however it goes, we're about to get into the reusables and all this, is I just want people to drink more water. I don't care if you drink ours. Yeah. And people get so mad when I say that. I'm like, just drink more water. And that's always been the basis of this. So it's funny when you get into anything, people always want to see why. And what I said is, if I really didn't care, if it was just about making money and doing all that, why wouldn't I have attached myself to a brand that was already in existence? Yeah. Why would I try to do one from the beginning? It's impossible.
But it sounds like you haven't taken the easy route, to date. So why start now? So it sounds like steps 1, 2, 3, potentially 4 or 5, family, having kids, the 2 boys. If we're sitting here 5 years from now, what has Theo done? Not saying post this. Hopefully this is still cranking into its successes. But what are the next steps?
I think about that a lot. The most important, first and foremost, I'm a father and I'm a husband, right? So I just had to talk at jiu-jitsu this morning. I just had to talk with one of the fathers there that was saying, it's a miracle that a lot of people from certain generations, the way parents used to be, that we're actually functioning as humans, that we're actually having a conversation, because there wasn't the attention that is given now to kids.
Absolutely.
There is a tremendous attention given to kids that we give. And what I'm trying to do, and what's the most important in the 5-year journey, is I want my kids to be very aware, my 2 sons, as of right now, to be very aware of like their place in the world, what the deal is here, that time is limited, that have your experiences, but try to maybe get ahead a little, meaning like that it's not all about you, it's not all about self. I'm trying to teach them things that was never told to me, right? But also well equip them to understand that there's losses in life and there's things that are bad and also there's things that are good, and be joyful and be grateful. The things that maybe not just exist, not just go make money, like understand life a little, right? So that's first and foremost, being the best husband I can, creating the best marriage I can, really like, having that story and having that reliability of best friends and partners and all that. Business-wise, listen, my industry has changed so dramatically that I had to do something recently where in my own psyche, in my own self, I couldn't be the old guy on the lawn banging the rake and being like, no, I just don't understand. Like Daniel Day-Lewis, like why are we not all doing these? And it's just not like that anymore. We're in a different time in the business. And I've had to adapt and be like, okay, well, you just have to be the best actor. And whatever project it is, that's going to sort itself out. You just got to be the best in that project. It's about creating. It's more about volume now than it's ever been. Yeah. It's about volume, where it never was. It used to be a selective thing, like if you didn't see somebody in a film for like 3 years. But because time is moving in 5-second headline society, if you don't see somebody in a film in a couple of years, they're forgotten about. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's become volume now, which is why you see film actors on television shows, on commercials, on credit card commercials, on this and that. They're everywhere. So it's become a volume game. I've had to really adjust my system to that, and I'm starting to kind of take that on now. So with that, it would just be still continuing to do the work, knowing that I'm never going to reach that perfection level. And then, in all my businesses, there's that quote that I think, maybe it was Warren Buffett who said it, or somebody said, don't get into business with people you wouldn't want to have stay over your house for the weekend. Yeah. Or watch your kids, or like hang out with. And I'm really trying now to just be around people, not just in my personal life, but in business, that like, it's not a hassle. Where I'm not like, oh God, I gotta call this person. I really don't want to call them, but they're part of the company, and I have to. I'm trying to like really minimize those. I don't think anybody's ever gonna bat 1,000. There's always gonna be something like that. So really, it's just trying to become more. And for me, it's also about. And we talked about this. Ambition is an amazing thing, but you have to control it. Yeah. Because you don't want to be jack of all trades, master of none. And that's very easy when you're an ambitious person, the shiny object. Oh, I'm going to do that.
Especially in a 5-second headline culture that we live in, that we're all infected by to one degree or another. Mm-hmm. How do you get really, really good at something that then makes a difference in other people's lives?
That's right. And listen, we saw that recently, what people don't realize, with Kobe Bryant's, the horrific passing of him and his daughter and everybody on that helicopter, was that he was basketball. That was his thing. He was a master. Yeah. He was the best at that his whole life. And then he took those talents and did something else. What I think where we're getting into a tricky part for all of us, and I just see this as an outsider, because I try to take that 10,000 foot view, is that a lot of people aren't willing to drill down on like one thing. So when I was a waiter, I wanted to be the best waiter. I always want to be the best. Like, when I train jujitsu and I'm like doing it a couple of days a week, and I'm like, okay, I just want to get better from yesterday to today. And then I've won. I'm not worried about on my journey to a black belt. I'm worried about here at this moment. Am I better? Did I learn something new that got me better than yesterday? So I think that what I'm trying to do, and for this whole 5-year plan, is that I'm hoping in 5 years, 5 years is a really long time. If I think about 5 years ago from now, 5 years is a tremendous amount of time. I hope that I'm in a better position, and I hope that my biggest struggle is the continuous focus. Stay focused. And I think we all have that. I think it's stay focused in what it is, because of the way it is, the shiny objects are all over. So it's focus in this, focus in that. So and also the truth is, whether I'm here for another month or another 100 years, whatever my life goes, I really want to be able to leave by making a dent in the world, and not a bad dent. Like, I try so hard to give everybody, and this is something that I get told is a bit of a fault, is I want to give everybody everything, even people I don't know. So I try to I want to make people feel uplifted, and I also want to let people know that as someone who started at the bottom of what I do, that you can do anything. It doesn't have to be acting. Right. You can do it, but it might actually be successful the day before you close your eyes for good. But it doesn't matter, because it has nothing to do with the end result.
Well, I hope for the people that are going to watch this to realize, because it was a lesson that I had to learn probably 25, 26, and it was a hard lesson, where someone sat down with me and said, you're chasing the money. And he goes, it's kind of embarrassing to watch. And this was the chairman of the board of this company up in Canada. He goes, chase the work, whatever the work is. And I think that's what you described in your story today, is you constantly chase the work. 100%. The work in the early days to make the money, the work being going, I want to do this active thing, and you chase that, and that next step came. Is there shiny things down the path? For sure. What those look like, or how people measure what is shiny, what's not, it's all different. But people need to realize that you put your head down and you chase the work. Those things will come.
I chase little wins all day, little wins. Just little wins. And it's so weird that to say it out loud, it's never about the money. There are moments where I think about it. I'm like, what? Oh, that has to be paid? Yeah. We have that, right? We're good. But it's never about that. I set target goals. I have to take care of that. I have to figure that out. So even when I'm in a scene, when I'm rehearsing a scene, or I'm working with the other actor, and I go in, I go, okay, well, this is where I want to get to. I want to get to this emotional place, but I'm going to need to go here and then here. So I'm a fixer. I love figuring things out. And I think that in business and in life, if you just focus on what's at hand and fixing that, you're never thinking about the money. Because the money, if you learn how to fix all these things, or get better at all these things,
it's what you can control.
Right.
You can control the money. You control the situations, the levers that are in front of you today, right? Yeah, you can control the input.
That's it. And the effort. Exactly. More importantly, you can control the effort. How much effort are you giving into it? So I'm, as someone who absolutely loves to work, I love to work, probably to a detriment. I just enjoy the high of working. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do anything else. My high comes from completion. Where I feel good is completion, whether it be running miles, or whether it be, figuring out something. I go, oh, I didn't think about that. Yes, do that. It's I love completion. And if money comes from that, terrific. That's it.
Thanks for checking out the Spur Leadership Podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, and while you're at it, leave us a review or a comment. You can reach us by email at podcast@spurleadership.com, and you can also find us on Twitter @Spur Leadership, or on Facebook @Spur Leadership. I'm Mac Richard, and this has been the Spur Leadership Podcast.